Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. I've been asked several times now if I could rebuild any ship, a replica, what would it be, and would I? So, taking the time today to answer that question gives us an interesting opportunity to talk about some museum theory stuff. First off, some museum ships are replicas. For example, Bounty or Mayflower. In Maryland, we had both the Dove and the Pride of Baltimore, which is not quite a one-for-one reconstruction, but representative of an entire class of vessels. So there are tons of replica vessels out there, which are of vessels that were not preserved. So are those historically significant? And I think, yeah, I think absolutely. And there's absolutely a reason to build replica vessels for time periods that are not represented. The Greeks have an awesome trireme. There's obviously no ancient Mediterranean triremes left. So the fact that they have rebuilt Olympias, which is a relatively small vessel, I want to say about 170 tons. I think it's very cool to see that, and researchers were able to then see, well, how fast does a ship like this go? That's significant. Is it worth building a replica vessel when that money could go to an actual original ship that is operating as a museum that could use that funding? Now that's another question entirely. I think for World War II era warships, maybe we don't need to spend the money on another World War II era battleship. You might disagree with me. There are a lot of American battleships left, but how cool would it be if we rebuilt Bismarck? There's no German battleships that are preserved, and very few German museum ships in general. So maybe it would be worth it. The French frigate Hermione is a great example of this. The French were a huge maritime power, and they don't have any sailing ships left like the United States has Constitution or Great Britain has Victory. So they built a replica. However, they had the chance of recovering one of their 72-gun ship of the lines that Great Britain had captured and was willing to give back to them, and they chose to let the Royal Navy sink it instead. Maybe all the money spent on building a reconstruction of Hermione would have been better spent acquiring HMS Implacable, the former French warship, which was an actual historically significant vessel that should have been preserved. So it's definitely something to think of. Is it worth it? And another thing to think of is authenticity. And this is definitely worth talking about. Battleship New Jersey has 20mm phalanx guns on board. They're not the original ones from the ship, but the Navy gave us a set of 4, like we should have, to make the ship look complete. Iowa and Wisconsin did not have any Navy 20mm phalanx guns around. So if you look at Wisconsin, her 4 positions are completely empty. If you look at Iowa, they have rebuilt facsimiles. None of these ships have the originals that they would have carried during the 80s. So which one is more accurate or more significant? The one that has actual phalanxes but not her right ones? The one that has reproductions? Or the one that has none at all because the Navy took them off? We debate about that in the museum field all the time. In fact, I'm looking forward to it in late September. The Historic Naval Ships Association is having a conference down in Mobile at Battleship, Alabama. And I'm looking forward to going down there and seeing all of my friends so we can have these debates in person. Normally I'm just Facebook messaging Megan, who you've met on some of our other videos, the curator of Missouri, or other colleagues. Like, what do you think about this? So the fact that we didn't get to go and meet up in person during the pandemic, I'm really excited to go meet him. There's a link to Hintz's website in the description if you're interested in becoming a member of the Historic Naval Ships Association or looking for information about the conference. So if one of these billionaires decides that they don't want to go into space, they would rather spend their money recreating a historically significant vessel and they reach out to me to be a part of that process, which ship would I choose? And first of all, yes, I would jump at an opportunity like that. If any billionaires watching right now, I'm in. My lifelong dream is to become the curator of a brand new museum ship, so I don't inherit any of the problems and mistakes of my predecessors. I would love to be the one to create all those mistakes that successors can then complain about later. So, yeah, if somebody came up to me and they were like, you have a blank check, go build any ship in the world that's ever existed, which one would I choose? My answer would be the destroyer escort Samuel B. Roberts. I've got a couple of reasons for that. At 306 feet long and about 1,500 tons, she's not a huge ship. It would be freaking awesome if I could rebuild a World War II Iowa class battleship, or Bismarck, or Hood, or Enterprise. How hugely important would it be if we had a replica of the aircraft carrier Enterprise CV6 around? Like that would be magnificent if we could do that. I don't think it's possible. I don't even think with a blank check you could make something that big faithfully. And going back to something we talked about earlier, I wouldn't want to spend billions of dollars rebuilding a huge ship like that when you could make a much smaller one and hopefully invest that other money in the rest of the museum ships that actually served in World War II. Another reason why I'm choosing Samuel B. Roberts is because we have two other destroyer escorts in this country, Stuart and Slater, that give us a rough example of what these ships would have looked like. So blueprints are a plan, but they don't tell you everything. So even if we have the full blueprints for a Ruddero-class destroyer escort, we don't entirely know what it would have looked like on the inside. But using ships like Slater as an example, we've got a good idea of that. We don't have a World War II aircraft carrier in her World War II configuration. We've got 4 World War II aircraft carriers preserved in this country, and a 5th one that was completed right after the war had ended. But they all served well into the Cold War, and in some cases into the 90s. So they are not outfitted and painted to look like a World War II carrier. So what would this ship actually look like? I'd rather not make guesses. Slater gives us a real good idea what a destroyer escort looked like. And yet, no Ruddero-class destroyer escorts were preserved, like Sammy B. Slater is, I believe, a Cannon-class destroyer escort, so a little bit different bridge, different armament, similar, but not identical. So this would be adding a new piece to the puzzle. And, of course, the final piece de resistance, Samuel B. Roberts, is sunk in action during the Battle of Samar. I won't give you the full history of her here. Definitely go read her Wikipedia article or buy a copy of Last Stand of the Tin Can Sailors by the late James Hornfisher, an amazing book that primarily focuses on Samuel B. Roberts and some of the other ships in that engagement. Worth reading about their history. We'll probably talk about it elsewhere on this channel in the future. But the historical significance of that vessel and the fact that she was sunk in action, I believe, makes it worth restoring her. Well, reproducing her. So, is Samuel B. Roberts my favorite ship of all times? No, far from it. But I think the combination of historical significance, something similar left that we can reproduce, and a unique class makes that my choice. Other ships that if I could just randomly pick anything, I would love to pick a World War II Iowa. I'd love to see what one of these looked like in World War II. I would love an Alaska-class battlecruiser. Absolutely love those ships. Battleship Maryland, my home state ship, could be in her Pearl Harbor configuration. We don't have any ships left that look like they did at Pearl Harbor. I could go on and on and on. Ships like the Enterprise, Bismarck, Hood, they're all great ships. I love them. I would love to see reproductions of them. but maybe not something that large at the expense of the active museum ship fleet that is arguably more significant. So, I'm leaving you guys with a ton of room for comments down below. I would love to read what ship you guys think. I'm American-centric. Do we really need another American museum ship when we've got more than any other country in the world? Maybe it is worth making a reproduction of. Let me know in the comment section down below what you want, what your criteria are for it. Let me know what you think is the most historically significant, or what you think is more historically significant in terms of restoring a vessel. What is accurate? What feels accurate to you as a visitor coming to a museum ship? Do you want to see the ship empty like when the Navy actually walked off, or do you want to see a ship that looks like they just walked off? I want to hear all these comments. And maybe we'll get some ideas for future videos out of it. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, and also from a number of other private businesses and individuals. If you'd like to join them in supporting our museum, there's a link in the description below. It allows us to keep doing what we're doing. You can also support the museum and our YouTube channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out we're out here. Thanks for watching.